All right, welcome back. So it's been a while since I've done a true follow along tutorial. So I'm going to have all these images available below there from Pixabay. And so what I'm going to be doing here today is showing you how to take an image like this, put it on a background like this, and take this guy and put it on this. There's always minor differences between two. A lot of times in these tutorials, it's like a one thing. It's almost like one size or one way fits all. And that's not true. It's not that it's a drastic difference. It's just a minor difference. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at both of these. I'm going to be working a little bit quicker than normal today. This is more of an advanced tutorial. So hopefully that those of you who are watching this are going to understand a lot of the basics of Photoshop and what I'm doing, so I don't have to spend time explaining what they are and why I'm using them. Now, the cool thing about this tutorial is we're going to do a couple of different things. One, we're going to do advanced masking. Second, I'm going to show you how to color match your image to the background image. Now, look, and I stress this out all the time. A lot of Photoshop is how you photograph it, not what you can do. People think you can just take random images together and put them together. Even when I'm selecting these images out, I'm picking very specific images because the way they're shot is important. So if you look at this one of this lady here, notice we just see the sky. So what's that angle like? So when I come up here to the fog, it's actually, this is shooting a little bit down compared to her, but it's basically the sky. So I think it's going to work. Usually you need to have that perspective pretty close. So on this one, we're almost at about eye level, maybe a little bit down on this guy, and then same kind of view or perspective here. And I'm also looking, look, his head's going to be up in this spot. That's a nice clean spot. And right here, her head's going to be basically up in this area. Actually, this image is quite a bit smaller, so we're not going to be using a lot of this, and we're going to put her head up here. I'm not a big fan of putting heads in horizon lines. Let's go ahead. We're going to dive into this. I'm going to walk through two. We're going to do them pretty quickly. So the first thing that we're going to be doing, and we are in the new Photoshop. And so whenever I'm doing these tutorials, I'm going to try to keep up to date. So using the latest technology that we have available. So if you notice, the toolbar might have switched. I loaded up my toolbar. So we're going to go ahead and grab our new wonderful object selection tool. And what we're going to be doing in this case is we're going to go ahead and we're going to go into select and mask. Now by default, Photoshop now is going to automatically be making those selections for us. So I can just go ahead and click on those and make that selection. So we've made that selection, but it doesn't really matter whether you make it here or you go into select and mask and then just hit select subject. In essence, it's going to be doing the same thing. Now in this case, one of the issues that we have is kind of a pouring of color. So you're going to want to make sure that on refine mode, you're going to actually be on color aware, and it's most likely going to give you a better selection, but we can always click on object aware and see if it gives us a better selection by doing it in that method. All right, so I've got color aware. We can click on that. We can hit select subject. It's going to say, do you want to discard it? And you can see that color aware did make a huge difference and give us a better selection. And one thing I can try is refine hair. So the issues that we have is some of this blue that's kind of peeking through. You're going to see that we're going to have a difficult time getting rid of this totally. So we're going to go ahead and hit refine hair. You can see it did a better job of removing that, but it didn't remove it all. So let me zoom in and let's hit Command Z so we can go back to see what that looked like. And then we'll hit refine hair. And look, it's getting some of it, but not all of it. Even if we come in with this refine edge brush, I've noticed that it's not picking up some of these different areas. So right in here, I just almost absolutely can't get rid of that blue in that area and in some of these areas. And that's okay. Look, life isn't perfect. Sometimes you need to manually go into these images and fix them. That's about as good of a mask that we're going to get at this point. So we're going to be okay and happy with that. Look, the more time that you spend on a mask, the better. You could literally go in here with your brush and paint stuff in and out and to get it exactly how you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to a layer mask, and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So you can see we've got our image with a layer mask. It's cut out. Is it perfect? No. So let's go ahead and move this image over. So the way I'm going to move it over is grab that move tool, which is the letter V. Click, hold, drag up into the tab of fog when it appears, drag back down and let go. And there's no reason for me to center this image because it's not something that I'm going to do. I'm going to hit Command 0 to fill this frame, and I'm going to move her to basically where I want. Remember, I said I'm not a big fan of having horizon lines through head, so I'm going to move her up a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and crop this image. So I'm going to hit this crop. I'm going to keep a 3:2 ratio. We're just going to bring it up there. And actually, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit OK and apply that. And there we go. We've cropped our image. We've got her in. And she actually looks pretty good in this. Remember, the way lighting hits your subject is going to be important. Now, this image is going to traditionally be a little bit backlit if we had a subject here. Well, why? Because the background of our subject is where the light's coming from. Our hair looks pretty good. Now, the main thing that you always run into when you're cutting out hair is having on these semi-translucent areas this kind of weird, funky coloration. And that's because it's picking up the color in the background. So we're going to be doing a couple different things to this image to make this look better. So we will zoom back out. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this layer. So I'm going to hit Command or Control J and duplicate this layer. I'm going to turn this layer off for right now. We're going to click on the bottom layer and we are going to change this. Now, if you have blonde hair, you're usually going to be using screen. And if you have darker hair, a lot of times you're going to be using multiply. But the key is you're going to either use multiply or screen to help blend the hair in. In this case, I'm going to start with screen. And if we decide to change it, we can. I'll show you what it looks like with multiply. So let's go ahead and turn the top image off. Now in the top image, nothing's been done. It's a normal image. The only part that we want to use this blending mode that we have below is on the hair. You can see it's giving her a ghostly effect. It actually doesn't look that bad, but we don't want that. So we're going to turn this back on. We just want to apply it to this area in here to help it blend and match the colors of the background. That's our goal here. We're trying to get it to match the background color better. So we'll come over here to our mask. We're going to grab our brush. We want to make sure the color black is there because we want to paint away on this layer and reveal the layer below it. So to do that, we're just going to come in here and apply this hair. So anywhere I don't like it, we're just going to come. And remember, you got to be pretty accurate. You don't want to go too far or it's do weird things to the rest of the image. Constantly sizing this brush. Now look, normally if I was doing this, I would be zooming into this area just to get it more exact. But remember, for tutorials, I'm just trying to zip through these and get them so that we know what's going on. So now you can see we're really starting to blend that hair better into the background. So let's see what would happen if we change this to multiply. So you can see it's getting sort of a weird effect. Usually with dark hair, you want to darken it. And with light hair, you want to lighten it. So in this case, we're going to be using screen. Now the issue here is that this area is a little bit bright and I want to darken that hair, but we want to darken it on the screen layer. So let's go ahead and make a new curves layer and we're going to put it in between those two layers. We're going to come in here and we're going to start to darken this area. You can see it really darkening that hair. That's what we want. Now that we've darkened this, we need a mask and we need this mask that we have from down here below. To move a mask, you're going to hold the Alt or Option and you're going to drag that mask up. So that's applying this mask here. And now this curve is darkening those areas that we see up here. Now what we can see is it's way too strong. And so we can just lower that opacity of that layer and just lighten that up a little bit until we get hair that seems to blend a little bit better than it did before. So this is what it would look like without, and then we can just kind of add that back in until we get it. Now don't worry, we're going to be adding color over our subject to help blend or match that background. We're going to come up here. We're going to do one more curves adjustment. So I'm going to hit curves. And this time what we're going to try to do is try to match the contrast with the background. So notice she's very contrasty and we almost have a matte feel in the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to once again or Alt or Option, or just come over here and make a clipping mask, this layer to the ones below it. And we're just going to go ahead and lower that until the contrast of her starts to match the contrast below. And that looks pretty close. We'll start with that now. We can always come back in. Now you can see it's a little bit bluish green. So what we can now do to start matching the colors, we can start to go into the curves layer and we can start adjusting colors. So we can go up here into the highlights. Notice we can add reds, or if we go down, we can cool that off. But for reds, I think we're pretty good. We can go into our shadows and we can add reds and we can cool. Now it's making a little bit too cyan. The color that I actually want is going to be down here in blue. So we're going to go to the blue shadows. And if I go up, you'll notice we're getting some more of that blue. And I'm trying to match the blue here over. And I'm trying to match the blue closer here. This is a little bit more vibrant, but you can see now her skin tone and her face and everything is really starting to match a whole lot better. You could pull down here and make everything on her a little bit warmer, but I don't think we really need that. And if you wanted to go into the reds and the greens and try those as well, we could go in here and do our best to go ahead and match. In this case, there is a little bit of magenta, but I think we're going to be pretty good for right now. Now, one of the issues I had is I think she's just a little bit too saturated. So if someone is too saturated, we're going to make a hue saturation. Once again, we're going to clip that layer. And what we're going to do is simply just lower the saturation levels a little bit so we can remove some of that vibrancy to blend into the background. All right, so we're getting pretty good. Now I can go in here and I'm going to go into curves again. I could darken her up a little bit. I think she's a little bit light for someone that would be backlit. So we're going to go ahead and just darken the whole image of her up a little bit so it blends a little bit better. Now you can see already we're really starting to blend this image here. All right, and the last thing that we can do here to more closely match these is add a gradient map. So I'm going to go up here to gradient map. Now, obviously this is an old gradient map. So we want to go ahead and change this. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to actually turn this off. And we want to make sure the gradient map is selected. Then we're going to come in here. So what we can do to pick these new colors is right here. This is our shadow color. We'll come in and double click this. We'll come into the darkest area and select that color and hit OK. I'm going to come over here, double click this. We're going to go into this and pick our lightest color, which is maybe up here. And that looks okay. So we're going to hit OK. So that's going to be our shadow and highlight color. You can already see our subject changing. Now it's right now it's applying this to the whole image. Don't worry about that. Then we're going to come in here. We can actually pick some other colors if we wanted. So if we want colors in between here, you can do as many as you want. You can come in here and click on these areas. And then we can pick a little bit darker color. So in this case, I'll pick maybe this darkest red here and hit OK. So you can see we've gone from there to there. Then we can come on over here and we can add a new point right there. Click on that and we'll add this color right here. And we'll go ahead, OK. So now here's our new gradient. You can slide these sliders around to change the way the gradient works. So if I wanted less of this and more of this, I could slide this like this. And we can change that gradient. And we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And then we're going to turn this gradient map back on. It's going to be too strong. Now remember, we just want this on our subject. So we're going to go ahead and clip it again. All right, that looks a little bit better. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to change the blending mode to color. And then what I'm going to do is just lower this. I'm going to lower this opacity until I think the colors blend and look good as far as the foreground and background. I can come over here and turn them off and them back on. And you can see now we're adding a little bit of color subject to simply get this to blend in. And so that is going to be photo number 1. So let's go ahead and cut this guy out. So we're going to come up here to our selection tool. We can hover over him. If it's not ready and not showing you the selection, it does take a little bit for it to render. You can see it's rendering up here. So notice it's made that selection. We can click on it. It's going to make our selection. We will go into select and mask. And I'm going to hit refine hair because I don't think it's going to work good on this one. You can see it actually took way too much of the hair out. So let's hit Command Z to undo that. And what we're going to do is just grab this refine hair brush. I'm going to make sure it's on smart radius for edge detection. And we're just going to go over just the outside area of this hair, just to simply pick up those semi-transparent areas. We don't want to go over his whole head because it's not going to look good. All right, that's starting to look a little bit better. So let's go ahead and say that that looks good. We're going to change this to layer mask. So we output with the layer mask. We're going to hit OK. There we've got our guy cut out perfect. We're going to grab our move tool, which is the letter V, click, hold, drag up to the tab you want to put him in, drag back down and let go. And let's zoom out a little bit. I'm going to place him where I want him. So we're going to place him right over about here. And there's a little bit too much negative space up here. So let's go ahead and crop that down a little bit. Once again, we'll just come in here and crop him just a bit. And that looks better. Now you can see the issue. We have this line on the outside from the selection. The hair looks good, but there's this line and it's really easy to get rid of. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and you're going to all right. So I have zoomed in so we can kind of see this white halo. Now what we need to do so we can see what in the world we're doing is we're going to create a new layer. I'm going to hit Shift Delete on a Mac and fill that with black. So it's easy to see that line. Actually just remove it, but it makes it easy just to see what you're doing. You're going to come up here to your mask and you're going to either Control or Command click. So it's Command on a Mac, Control on a PC. And that's going to remake your selection. Easy to do. Now to move this in, we're going to come up and go to Filter, Other, Minimum. 1 pixel. Okay. And that's going to move this selection in 1 pixel. That's all that we need. Now, in this case, we don't want to apply anything in here. We want to actually apply it out here. So we're going to invert this, which is Command Shift I or Control Shift I. And if we want to hide that, you can hit Command H to hide your selection. It's not getting rid of it. It's just hiding it. All right, perfect. So we're going to come out here to the mask. We're going to grab our brush, get the color black. Doesn't matter if you paint over the guy a little bit. We're just going to come over here and simply paint out that white area on both of these sides by going over it, and we're good. So now we've removed that halo. We can delete this black, and just like that, we've got a much better selection. Command 0 to fit the screen. All right, I'm going to hit Command H to bring back the selection so we can see it. Now, we're going to use the selection, but now we have to inverse it again. So Command Shift I to inverse it, because what we want to do next is going to be on him. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is then make a new adjustment layer mask. And we are going to flatten this guy out a little bit just by darkening him, lower the contrast a little bit, just kind of pull everything down. This isn't vibrant. We don't want him to be vibrant. Obviously, he was shot with the studio lights. So we're just going to go ahead and flatten this out just a little bit. And that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll pull down on the highlights a little. Then we're going to go into our individual channels and full with those. So remember, this is our highlights, so we can change the color of our highlights. We're just going to cool those down a little bit. We can come in here and try this area, but I don't think it needs affected. And we can go down into the greens and we can check and see if anything looks better there. I think if we add just a little teeny tiny bit of green, then we can come down in here to the shadows and notice we can change those. We don't really want either of those colors. So we're going to go down to blue. I can do the shadows again. So I want to cool those off just a little bit. That looks pretty good there. I don't want to add any yellow or anything into the face. So we're just going to leave it as is. So this is already looking much better. And we haven't even added the gradient map yet. Now remember, we want this to just apply to him. So we can clip this. I should have done this before. This is going to give you more accurate coloration. You can see it's a little bit warmer here. So if it's in the background, we need some warm. I can come in here and I can dial some yellow into his face just to get a little bit more of that yellow that we see in him. And okay, pretty good. Then we're going to come in and do our gradient map. So we're going to click on our gradient map once again. We are going to hold Alt or Option and we're going to clip it to the layer below. We're going to make sure that we select the gradient map icon, because if you don't, this won't work. We will come on over here. We're going to come down, grab and double click this color. We're going to pick a dark color in this image, the darkest we can find. That looks pretty good. We're going to set that as our first color. And we'll come over here to our highlights. We're going to come up into the sky and pick the brightest color. And we can start there or stop there. Look, we can just do a 2-color, or we could add other colors if we wanted. So what I'll do is I'll do a 2-color this time so you can see what the difference is. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK, and I'm going to turn this back on, and that is going to give us our color there. I usually use a color blending mode, but you don't necessarily need to do that. And we're going to go ahead and lower this out. And basically what I need to do is then slide this adjuster until I get the color that I want. There's no right or wrong in this. It's just you're trying to get rid of some of that red, and we're going to go ahead and cool this down. And so we get sort of almost a monochromatic look. I can add more or less. That looks pretty good for me. The only thing here is this is standing out just a little bit too much. So what we can do is simply make another selection. I can clip that to the layer below. I'm going to darken this area until it starts to look like it blends in a little bit better. We need to add a little contrast. We can. And lighten this area up. So that's getting better. This area down here is a little bit greener. So we can add some more color there to fix that. But that looks pretty good. So we've darkened this, but we've darkened our whole image up. And we don't actually want it on his face. We just want it on his shirt. So what we can do is grab our brush in the color black, make our brush big. We can paint it out of his face. Doesn't matter about the sky because it's not getting applied there. We're just applying this to the shirt. All right, so this is now just darkening that shirt area down there. And I said the color was off, so let's go ahead and add a little warmth to it. Going to clip this, just this layer below, and then we're going to come in here and slide these sliders and see if we can get the color a little bit more accurate. So there we've got a little bit more yellow, green. The yellow is way too strong. Looks better. We'll see if a little cyan helps. Still a little bit too much yellow. That looks better. What I'm going to do is actually add one more layer, which is a hue saturation. We're going to go ahead and clip that this way. And what I'm going to do is just desaturate that so it's a little bit closer to blending in. And we are good to go. Once again, we don't want this on the face. So we're going to alt drag up the mask and we're good to go. So let's go ahead and review what we've done. We cut out our subject. We made a curves adjustment to darken and flatten him out a little bit. We added a gradient map to get the colors a little bit more accurate. Then we've gone in here and adjusted with these 2 layers, the color of his shirt, which still isn't perfect. And I still need to go in. It's a little bit too yellow. And remember, these things are really easy to change because you can just simply go in at any time and dial something out. And that even looks better. We've changed the color balance. We've desaturated the shirt a little bit. And now we have our final composite of these 2 images. Hopefully you have found this video helpful. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps us out. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe.